Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about Silo, Season 2, Episode 3. This one was called Solo, and things are rumbling in the down, down deep of these silos, Tom. We got ourselves some revolution happening, some graffiti, which I don't think there's anything I hate worse in this world than
No place
graffiti.
for it. Mm-hmm.
Especially when it's as vague so that you can make it whatever you want it to be. Jennifer, I'm reaching out to you with that comment. But Tom, I enjoyed this episode. They are fleshing out some characters in this show that I guess I wasn't really interested in, but the more we're like diving into it and we're getting farther away than just Juliet being the main one, I'm enjoying it. And I'm enjoying it. I enjoyed this episode. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm excited to finally get a little bit more of Solo. He's a super fun character from the books, and being able to kind of see Steve Zahn bring it to life has been super cool for those that have read the books. The judge stuff I think is super fascinating. Again, they don't feature her, and she doesn't have as much prominent role as she kind of does here. And she kind of makes some plays and seemingly has more than just a handful of relics. She's got a lot up her sleeve, so I'm interested to see what ends up happening to her relationship with Bernard. But again, the show seems or continues to be super fun, and I'm digging it.
Sure. Just to clarify, Solo is not who I care about. It's the judge who I actually care about and
Okay.
am fascinated by, and I have a lot of questions. Definitely thought she was going to get murdered by a measuring tape during this episode, which didn't
Strangling.
happen. And I was like, okay, I guess Bernard is not a like complete murderer. He's like a murderer within boundaries and
Yeah, adjacent murderer adjacent.
murder adjacent. Aren't we all though, Tom? In a way, by the decisions we make. Okay, we're gonna go through this episode, and now we have two silos, so we're gonna split it up. We'll talk Silo 18 and Silo 17, just so we don't have to hop back and forth. Because at this point, while the storylines are connected, they're separate and not affecting each other. But as I mentioned, this episode, we get the quick reminder of, hey, there's some rabble rousing going on.
Rebel.
We think that Juliet is alive and Mechanical is. I have some questions about the order being like, make Mechanical be the people to blame. I'm pretty sure Mechanical are the ones you want like not upset, and let's work with Mechanical. Make the, I don't know, up, high highs the bad people because they don't do anything worthwhile, you know? I don't mean to bring like classes into this, but poor people rise up and murder the rich. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think even Meadows seems to call that out. Like, hey, maybe don't arrest this guy that you took in the Down Deep because this is going to be the group that is probably going to start a revolution.
Right, exactly. Also, they know how the generator works, and we need the generator because we need to breathe air. Speaking of breathing air, we start with this server room. Have we been as an audience inside the server room before, Tom?
So I think we've heard of the server room, and it was featured or more prominent in the first season, but it's just essentially a bunch of humming servers. But this specific room, where it's like labeled server room, essentially just leads to the vault. It doesn't really lead to the server room, so that's just kind of a front. But actually stepping into the vault, this is all brand new territory and super cool.
Sure. When it said server room and the camera pushed into it, did you think we were going to get the cast from Party Down in there? All those servers just hanging out. You know what I mean?
That'd have been fun.
That's
A little play on
joke.
words.
That's a little joke we like to tell. Once again, AI is doing this podcast. We're not real humans. So that joke was written by AI. Thanks, AI. All right. So Bernard and Judge Meadows are having this conversation, and we see the order, the book that is the order, very thick, very biblical. I feel like Meadows is playing close to the chest how much she remembers about this, because she's like, oh, I've forgotten most of it. But then she just keeps bringing up throughout this episode the stuff that Bernard is doing as it relates to how the order reads.
Right.
So once again, I find Meadows like fascinating, and I continue to how they are playing her and how that actor is playing her. I feel like I'm very fascinated by this storyline because I don't know what they're trying to do. In a
Well,
like
she
not
even-
I'm confused way, in a
Right.
like I'm curious and it's interesting way.
Yeah, especially to your point, like how much she remembers. I mean, she quotes specifically about if somebody doesn't clean, how like chaos is going to ensue. Like that's like the worst thing that can happen. And I think we get that confirmation. We kind of talked in last episode where Bernard had mentioned she was his shadow, but whether it was his shadow for like IT or the shadow for this bigger job that don't really have a name for, and this just kind of confirms it. Like she was in the know. I don't know. Had she been in? She had to have been in this room, right? So this room isn't new to her if she knew about the order.
No, I think she makes some comment about like I didn't want to return here. I want to get out of here. And obviously she's seen the order, and I don't feel like the order is something you don't check out the order with your public library book and carry it around.
That's
and
fair.
there's like a record inside on one of those cards where you put your name and the date, and it's got a Dewey Decimal System number on the side.
I feel like something that was super revealing here was just like the look and feel of this room, right? Where there was just there's like the slick tech screen on like right next to the order, and has like the screensaver kind of going on. There's all these like numbered shelves. So like the aesthetics of this room are just completely different, which makes you think we knew there were cameras, we knew there was like some sort of viewing room where they can kind of see all this stuff, but the technology in here seems to be to another level. I thought it was fascinating.
A little bit more modern. I did notice the numbers. You called them shelves, but I would say they were like anti-shelves. It was like tiered down.
They kind of had like little. I feel like it was just a design choice because I think they have like pull-out drawers or at least like holes in them that you can just kind of pull out from.
Sure. We're going to save this talk for our other podcast where we talk about modern architecture and the interior decorating styles of silos. So that's fashion with Tom and Julian. Silos, talking silos. Anyways,
Fashion.
Go ahead, Tom. Just
It's
a little plug for
but...
our other pod.
Okay. I think you're mixing up our like fashionista podcast that we do.
Oh, that's our other pod. Yes. Plug that one, Tom. What do we do on Fashionistas?
We watch RuPaul's Drag Race and talk about it.
Sure. No, we try on outfits on the podcast, and then we describe it verbally to the other person because we can't see each other. It does not have a lot of listeners, but neither does this podcast, and that hasn't stopped us. So, okay. We have Meadows sharing advice on like what Bernard should do, and she's like, "Hey, the order says this, but like I think you should maybe do this." And so the discussion is, "Hey, there's graffiti out there. Everyone loves this JL. I don't know who JL is. You need to like crack down on this, and any graffiti that glorifies a non-cleaner." You need to crack down on, which I find it interesting that the order like has already had this scenario happen and they've written contingencies for it. So that is a curious fact that you kind of brush over, but should have some impact on how this is all done. I think you and I have conjectured before, and you've read the book, so it's not conjecture from you, but I have conjectured that like all of these silos are just like studies in humanity in terms of like how we react in different situations. And so this is like, I don't know, a science experiment that went wrong at one silo. So they've written like how to handle a non-cleaner. Can we say non-cleaner? I feel like that is a good term for someone that does not clean.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
There should be a name for it though. I know it's never happened before, but there should be like a cool slang.
We'll call it an NPC, like a non-player character, a non-player cleaner.
Non-NPC. Oh, it's still NPC. Well, that's going to get confusing if this is all a simulation, Tom. Meadows has a deep and profound respect for Juliet, which I also find interesting. She keeps like reveling in the fact that Juliet has walked a straight line more than 50 feet and like is out there and didn't clean, which no one else had ever done. And so she's kind of talking about Juliet in those terms. Bernard comes in with the, hey, like she went out to clean because she had a red level relic. Red level relic is something that's difficult to say many times over. I encourage, if there are children listening, go up to your parent and say it 7 times. They'll probably put you in some sort of therapy. He mentions, okay, I wrote this fact down. Bernard mentions that she had a hard drive that was a red level relic. Wow, I almost didn't do it. And it had a 200-year-old cleaning video on it. Now, the years we've heard before are like 160, right?
It was like 120, 140, something like that, when they said like the last revolution or when the founders made up the rules. I don't know.
Okay, but he clearly mentions a 200-year-old cleaning video, which, what is happening with the TV and resolution technology advancement in this silo? Like, they should be on like 4K. Like 200 years is a long time. Think about 200 years ago, the TVs they had 200 years ago, Tom, were like 720. Like they weren't very good. Look it up, kids. So how does he know that was a 200? I find the years thing fascinating. Was this just a slip up or is this pertinent?
I don't know how much I want to divulge because
fine.
I do think the timing stuff is interesting. I mean, the only thing I would just clock to your point, like, they had this technology to be able to put this video in front of a visor 200 years ago. So to your point, and especially this room that we're in, this vault room, the technology seems to be well in advance of what we're seeing they are providing these silos, right? Because essentially whoever built these silos, if they have this technology, why is the silo so analog?
Right.
That's a big question, I think.
Sure, that's a good question. I hate the fact that you decided to read, of all the books.
So does Graham Yost.
Of all the books you've decided to read, you read these ones. I feel like if this show turned out to be a Truman Show, but I was Truman, like Apple just put this show up so that you could know everything, the show would be fake, and you could hold these things over me. I do not like this one bit. I hate being not in the know. I want to be in the know.
It is tough because, like, I mean, I never know. I mean, you certainly have recommended a handful of books. You got me some recently for my birthday, which I appreciate, but I never kind of know what to read. So, like, same way with Game of Thrones, when I can get into a story and just kind of fall into the world, which I definitely did with the Silo series, it was just fascinating. And definitely a part of me wishes I didn't see it, like Graham Yost, the kind of showrunner, had suggested, because they're probably going to take maybe some turns and some twists, and certainly as a podcaster, it might be kind of fun to conjecture about it a little bit more, but I also love torturing you, so that wins out.
Great. And for those of you that are curious, the books I got Tom for his birthday were the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Middle Testament. So,
well, and the graphic novel of the Bible, because, I need pictures. The
graphic novel where Jesus is ripped and he's got a machine gun. So it's a super modern retelling.
200-year-old machine gun.
He cures everyone's sins with that machine gun. Oh no. All right, we've got off the rails. This was an hour-long episode, Tom. We don't have time for this.
It's true.
Right.
We haven't even gotten past the first scene of Silo 18. Let's do it.
It feels like we just haven't talked in so long.
It's
All
true.
right. So Meadows is giving advice on quelling all of these things, and I don't know. I don't understand the relationship between Bernard and Meadows, like what he's looking for. I guess he's just lonely at the top. Is that what it is?
I think so, right? Like a guy that you know everything, but you cannot share it with seemingly anybody except for her.
Yeah, this sounds like you,
Tom. Kind of like me. This is why I talk to you.
I'm your Meadows. You're my Bernard, and I'm your Meadows, and you never listen to me.
I'll measure you anytime, buddy.
Great. To use your terminology, the other thing I clocked during this conversation was Bernard knew about Silo 17, and he knew that Silo 17, everyone died there. Because he says something like, oh, they died a long time ago before you were my shadow. But in the other episode where he's watching Juliet's screen and he sees all the dead bodies, they like make a point of him being appalled. So I guess maybe he hasn't physically seen it, but I found it interesting that he knew that Silo was gone and dead, because what we see in other like shots, I would have said, oh, Bernard is learning in that moment that there are other silos and another silo where everyone perished. So I don't know what I'm supposed to glean from this.
Yes, I don't know either what the kind of show is trying to tell us, or if this is more because Bernard is clearly lying in the situation where he tells her like, "Hey, Juliet didn't say, or she did say she wanted to go out," and you're kind of like, "Well, why is she lying to Meadows if she or he is trying to open up and have her really be his shadow?" So I don't know what information he has or doesn't have, or what he's choosing to share and not share. It's still kind of, I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
Sure. Yeah, the conversation between Meadow and him, I understand that. I guess this brings to question the larger world outside of the silo, what access Bernard has. I'm assuming he does not have all of the knowledge because the way that character is played, he's surprised by these things. So
Agreed. Yep.
somehow he knew that silo was dead, or to your point, is he just in this moment pretending with Meadows that he knew something she didn't know? Like, this is something I knew, even though he learned it in that moment. So
He did say nanny nanny boo boo at the end.
yeah, he's playing 4D chess, and the rest of us are playing 5D chess, as the Blueies like to say.
Yes, I love it.
All right, so...
By the way, my kid just couldn't stop singing Burger Time this evening, so I had to listen to him say Burger Time, pickles and cheese. I don't know what the song is, but for those of you who watch Bluey, go listen to our Bluey podcast, because we have children.
Tom and Julian, Blueying. That's what it's called. That one has a huge audience.
What's called We Blew Ourselves.
No.
We can't say that.
Phrasing, my good man. Yeah, everyone starts that podcast, but they drop off almost immediately once they find out what the subject matter is.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Kroger Delivery makes it easy to do your holiday shopping in a jingle. There might be a lot on your to-do list, but thanks to Kroger Delivery, you can get everything you need delivered straight to your door at the same great prices you'd find in store. Our refrigerated trucks always ensure that your groceries arrive fresh. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order of $75 or more and get free delivery with a Boost membership. Restrictions apply. See site for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
We have Patrick Kennedy and Danny Bly being mentioned, and I believe this is the conversation with Bernard and Sims, where Bernard is like, "Hey, Sims, did you do all of those secret police Gestapo things that I told you to do?" And Common's like, "Yeah, we've got all these people in custody. We're medicating some." And I was like, "Oh, medication, that sounds like a good thing." And he's like, "No, that's the medication where you're like staring at a wall and seeing nothing that they were doing to the one." I don't remember her name. But this all comes down to Patrick Kennedy, who is the gentleman with the large beard who is in Band of Brothers. And they have him in like solitary confinement. And ultimately, they need to know whether or not he saw what was on the hard drive. And so we have Sims interrogating him. I'm sure I said that wrong.
Interrogating. Closer.
Yep, I'm getting there. Not my first language, Tom. And Latin, my first language, obviously. People know that by now. And so we have Sims kind of leading pretty hard on him. All I could think about when they like took the hood off and he had like the leather strap in his mouth and all of those things, I was just like, oh, I bet his mouth is just so dry. Like, that would just be absolutely terrible.
It did seem great, or did not seem great. But like the way
little Freudian slip there. All right, go on, Tom.
The way S&M, I'm sorry, the way Sims...
Other podcast. Tom, keep it together, man. Keep it together.
Sorry, the way Sims is kind of questioning him and everything, I like Patrick's like responses where you're essentially saying like, yeah, everybody knows who you are, like kind of saying essentially Sims is like the boogeyman, and that's what they tell their kids when they're not behaving, that they're going to send Sims after them, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, it was like when we don't eat our broccoli, Sims shows up.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, broccoli's terrible. I'll tell a quick story, Tom. I have family in town for the holidays. They are at my parents'. I have a sibling who is a vegetarian who cooked broccoli on the stove. Broccoli being cooked on the stove casts this certain smell. My folks were not there when they arrived. So when they arrived, there was this smell in their house. And my dad spent 20 minutes searching the house trying to figure out, like, he thought like a garbage had not been taken out or something was rotting somewhere. And then I was like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm trying to figure out that smell. I was like, your eldest cooked broccoli. That's what you're smelling. He cooked it in your house. And
so your dad's never had broccoli or cooked broccoli, I guess.
My dad is... No, we're allergic to vegetables, the majority of us in this family. Anyways, sorry. All right,
great.
So Sims makes you eat your broccoli. Patrick is not afraid of him because they've already taken everything from him. They took Doris. And I was like, Doris, your grandmother? Because Doris is definitely a grandmother's name, right? Am I right? And then we find out Patrick was married to a grandmother who was named Doris. Tom, I don't know if you clocked it, but
I did.
having recently done a podcast where this phrase was uttered several times. I don't know if this is like an Apple mandate. They're like, hey, every show has to drop, and it's an obscenity, so we can't repeat it. But it ends in nuts and starts
nuts.
with the sixth letter of the alphabet. When he said it, I was like, oh, it's
fun nuts.
Bad
Yeah,
Monkey.
like the second,
Bad
it was
Monkey.
so good. Yeah. Like it's so great. I was hilarious. I love his follow up too. He's like, stop saying mysterious things and just tell me what you want. Like the back and forth was superb.
He should watch a Common commercial because Common always speaks in riddles, you know? Even when he's trying to make you buy IBM Watson AI, like Common's speaking in riddles. So this was fun. I just really like this actor. I wish he was in more things, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I enjoy that Graham Yost brought him in from Band of Brothers to do this. We start to discuss this drug, and Sims is like, hey, you know, I want information from you. I'm not going to take anything from you, but here's what I can give you. We have a drug that makes you forget. I can make you forget all the way to, like, Doris's death. And I found this interesting. I've never seen the Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind. I think that's the whole plot of that movie. But I was very interested in this drug. I think they kept saying drug. I think they just mean alcohol, but I don't know specifically what drug they were talking about.
I just like the way Sims is talking about this drug. It makes it seem so surgical. Like, how far back do you want to forget? Like, do you want to just forget the last couple weeks, or do you want to last couple years, centuries? Like, or not centuries, decades. Like, it's interesting to see the extent of the precision of the drug, which I thought was interesting.
I agree. I feel like Sims is playing him a bit. It would have been very funny if Patrick was like, I just want to forget this day. And Sims was like, booyah! And he pulled out a Four Loko, or one of those like gas station energy drink, malt liquor drinks. And he's like, take this, you won't remember a thing.
Take this and call me in the morning.
Right. Which... we should mention, Tom, our new sponsor is Four Loko. So have a Four Loko. Listen to the rest of this podcast. It won't take the hour it's going to take. That's their slogan. All right. So I'm interested in the games that Sims is playing. I'm interested in the games that Meadow's playing. I'm interested in the game that Bernard is playing. To expand on Meadows, she then stops in with Billings. and she is curious as to whether or not Juliet actually said she wanted to go out. Billings is like, hey, this is police work. We work very slowly. I have 5 witnesses. I have talked to 4 of them. And Meadows is like, so you have 1 more to talk to. And Billings is like, yes, that's how math works. I told you there were 5 witnesses, and I've talked to 4 of them, so there's 1 left. And
She is a
Meadows
judge.
like,
She's pretty smart.
yeah, she's super smart and very good at math. And so they telegraph this pretty hard, but you're like, okay, so this last witness is going to be the one that says they did not hear Juliet. And it's like, got it. Billings out of nowhere is like, oh, by the way, I also have the syndrome. And I thought, I guess he sees Meadows on his side in this moment. Like, she also is being suspicious of Bernard and Sims and, you know, that hierarchy. So
I wonder if it's all like relics that potentially he saw in her apartment too, right? Because they're looking at what seemed to be like a frisbee or something, and kind of he's kind of opining about what it is, and she doesn't know what it is. So I don't know why he feels so comfortable to confess if he just wants to get it off his chest. But yeah, I'm with you.
I think they should have had so much more fun with the relics in terms of like what was out, and like to look at something and be like, what do you think it was? And the other person be like, I have no idea. Like, it could have been anything. And I just don't feel it. If this was a funnier show, which it's not supposed to be, I think they could have had a lot of fun with weird relics. But let's move on. The talk of the syndrome. I know you know. Let me stop. Is the syndrome in the books?
I can't recall. I don't remember it being a major plot point outside of just, people having some sort of disease or something from being in the silo. But I like the way that she positions it. Like, essentially people weren't meant to live in a box and can't walk a straight line for X amount of time. That the syndrome isn't something that it's like a defect or genetic. It's just something that happens to humans.
Right. She makes it sound like, hey, the pact is like misguided in thinking that syndrome people are bad, but really this is just a maybe natural thing that happens when we put humans in a silo. And I thought that was interesting. There's some bonding going on here. I like this. Meadows is also like, listen, when you speak to, she's like, how many witnesses do you have left? And he's like, I have 1 witness left. I remember. And she's like, got it. She's like, when you talk to those last couple of witnesses, I want to see your report first. And I was like, okay. So Billings and Meadows on the same side. I like it because I have always liked Billings. I am now fascinated with Meadows. So I appreciate that they're teaming up.
With you.
Real quick moment. Sims talks to this retired raider. I was like, am I supposed to know who this guy is? I mean, this guy's got plaques. How do you retire in a silo? Don't you just work until you die? Like, does this guy have a pension? What's happening here?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the only reason they're doing it is that Sims is calling in his debt that I guess he owes this guy, and they quickly say he's a marksman. So, like, okay, this guy's going to shoot somebody later. Like, that was it.
This is he's the shooter at the end of the episode, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, guess what? When you put him in hockey masks and there's a lot of confusion, like, get rid of this. Unless this character comes in some way later, I did not need this. I did not need... Guess what? He's not a real good marksman, because this is also...
shots.
I'll just want to say this. They keep lingering on Coop in this episode, and from, like, 30 seconds in, I was like, oh, Coop's dying. Like, I don't care about Coop. I really don't. They haven't done enough for us to care about that character. This episode was like, he is a firebrand of why once he dies, everyone's now upset. But I was like, hey, show, like, kill a character that matters. I'm sure Coop is a lovely fella. I just did not care about Coop. And so I was also... It happened so fast when the shots were fired that I did not realize it was the same raider. But now that you're talking about it, it makes sense what they were doing. And I'm sure they thought they were clever, but it was unnecessary.
Yeah, maybe we'll see more of them. I'm with you. If we don't see more of them, then it seemed overkill and not needed.
Right. I kept thinking it was the actor from Children of Men that plays the, like, gruffled police guy that gets him into the camp. That's a reference that only my Children of Men heads are going to remember, which is our other podcast, Julian and Talking Heads with Julian and Tom, talking Children of Men.
Not to be confused with Talking Men with Julian.
Right, with Julian and Tom, right. That's a different, once again, people like early listeners and then it immediately drops off once they know we're just talking about the TV show 2.5 Men. All right, so Coop is spying on Shirley and the revolution for Knox. I can never remember Knox's name, but he's head of mechanical. I don't know. This revolution doesn't seem to have legs, but Shirley is really trying to rally these people.
She gets them there.
They just keep reminding us who Coop is so that they can kill him at the end of this episode. And I cannot stress this enough, Tom. I do not care.
Okay.
We have the Billings and the Raider interview where the show is like, hey, we're going to draw this out, so we're not going to actually let you listen to the conversation. We're just going to bring you back to Meadows, where Billings is like, hey, I talked to 5 people. 4 of them said that she said she wanted to go out. 1, and she goes, 1? And he's like, yes, there's 1 left. 1 person said that she did not hear her say she wanted to go out.
One person.
Yes, that's right. So what's the deal with Meadows having a projector of someone's home videos? I felt like I was watching that weird scene in Christmas Vacation where he's in the attic watching like old memories. What?
Yeah.
Why does she?
At first, I was like,
this?
"Oh, she has videos of her old family on the outside." Like, "Oh, that can't happen."
200 years ago, Tom.
Yeah, but it's again, I feel like it's another nod to the technology that exists in this world that they are shunned from having. Like, it's one thing to have like relics of a frisbee or an Etch-a-Sketch, but to have this little like cube thing that has the play button and can project seemingly home movies of some other family is interesting.
Makes me think about all the like family videos I've shot and how I really need to like up my game because 200
these are
years
a lot
from
more
now,
adorable.
some random person might be watching them in a silo being like, man, this guy did not get the lighting of the framing right. What a terrible dad. Also, is that the sound of a glass clinking while he's videotaping his kid's birthday? This is a terrible guy.
Why is all this video in portrait? Hold it sideways, man.
Yeah, you hate that. I don't understand it, but you hate it. Anyways, kill the cameraman. Real fast, something I skipped over is we have this quick cut, and we'll talk through it. And we kind of know, once again, it's a hard telegraph, but Dr. Daddy meets Phoebe Wells in the garden, and she's like, I can't wait to be a mother. They're redoing the drawing. She's like, some idiot went outside and didn't clean and died. So now we need another person. What an idiot. She went hang gliding. She was like, oh, look at me. I'm flying. And then I'm dead. And the doctor's like, oh, that was my daughter. And Phoebe Wells is like, well, hang gliding's stupid. And,
did we know Phoebe Wells? Like, was that name? Are we supposed to recognize that? Because I thought it was interesting that like she introduces herself as her full name, just for him to introduce himself as a full name. So then we know it's Nichols, and then they can have that awkward back and forth. But
everyone is a last name in this show, and when she said Wells, I was like, oh, that's Phoebe Wells, and I put it in the outline. And then the more I've thought about it, I was like, I don't think there's a Wells in this show that we've met. I think I'm just an idiot. So. That's on me, Tom. No, I don't know. I mean, we meet the husband or the father of the maybe soon-to-be child. I don't know how that's going to go for him. Mr. Wells didn't look recognizable, so I don't know.
They're just a couple.
They are just a couple, and let's just jump to that part. Did you see this coming? I feel like this was a hard foreshadow. We needed... Dr. Daddy has watched his daughter sacrifice herself, and he's like, listen, I'm going to sacrifice... He gets this weird, like, Slack message that's like, hey, don't actually remove the birth control.
Code Orange or something, yeah. But essentially, Doc Daddy has broke bad. He's breaking the rules, and I don't blame him.
He's bad, Doc Daddy, is what we're going to have to... Baddie Doc Daddy, as we call him in the silo. Oh, man. They're going to give us
that collar that he wears.
They're going to give us that, like... He's definitely going to the Gothic castle to watch a magic show. Are we... We're going to get that E rating on this podcast.
I
Tom.
control the E. I say whether we're explicit or not. It's just a toggle.
We've never been very good at self-judgment, so...
If you have comments, you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Let us know if we're explicit or not.
This is why we should...
Have we crossed a line?
All right, let's punch through from Baddie Doc Daddy to...
BD's me? Wait, no, BDD? B double D? I don't know. No. Keep going.
Sweet Lord. All right. The same chaos that has entered this podcast has also entered the Down, Down Deep. And we have Shirley leading the Free Teddy movement, which...
They all got t-shirts.
I really wish they would have chosen a different name. Free Teddy does not have the gravitas of, I don't know, Free George, Free Eugene, Free Russell. I don't know.
Okay.
So... Free Tom.
There you go.
So Shirley and Knox. Knox is over there, and he's like, hey, this is not the right way to do it. He's with Hank. Hank's got some judicial hockey mask-wearing fools with him. Patrick throws a Molotov, which kind of sets this whole thing off. And this felt like, did Sims arrange this? Are we...
Yes. I think that's what Sims said. You got to do me a favor. I can erase your memory or whatever, give you this drug, but you have to... sow chaos down there.
Sure. And then a guy we don't know shoots a gun, and a guy we don't know gets shot, and so we can move right on because it does not matter.
You mentioned earlier, this is the inciting incident. The young innocent kid is the spark that is going to probably fuel the revolution.
Sure. And I wonder how often people get shot in the silo. It feels like...
Oh, I think guns are very, very rare.
Yeah, it feels like everyone should be like, oh, that guy used that magic metal thing in his hand, and now Coop went to the down, 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 down deep, and he's not speaking anymore. And
They made a mention of that in the first season, where I think when Juliet became sheriff, she had a gun in that locked out locker that she had. So yeah, I think people have them, but they're very few and far between.
Sure. I feel like the demonstration and use of them is pretty rare, which Coop found out in his face. So, all right. What I thought was interesting is this then leads to Hank calling Billings on the old radio set. And Billings is like, hey, what do you need? Understand there's a lot of stuff going down in the down, down, down deep. And Hank's like, most of all, we need you. What is... He just needs the sheriff's presence, or was Hank under some sort of duress that he needs Billings to come down so that Billings can be held hostage?
I don't
Looked
remember.
like he was under some stress while he was making this call, as if someone had one of those magic metal things that shoots copper things into Cooper next to it. What was happening here?
That would be kind of interesting if there's more to play. Maybe Sims is playing Hank and getting the Billings to kind of come down. I don't remember what conversations Hank and Billings had maybe in the first season, because we know Billings did have to go down there at some point. Maybe Hank does know that Billings is more reasonable and by the book, or thinks he can help with his physical presence, but yeah, I'm not sure. It'd be interesting if there is, he's asking him down there for duress. Because I'm with you. I don't know if Sims was the one that told Patrick to throw this Molotov cocktail. That doesn't seem to be helpful. That seems to be inciting the riot. So I don't know what Sims is playing at, if that's where he essentially pointed Patrick.
Sure. And I just want to mention that I have been against Molotov cocktails from the beginning. It is a terrible
waste.
I mean, there's so many other things you can do with it. You can drink it. You could pour it in a glass and drink it. You could pour it into a bottle and drink it. You could drink it
pour it into another bottle.
Yeah, you could pour it into another bottle, and then you have 2 bottles with Molotov in it,
Then you could tape those bottles together and spin them around like a little science experiment and make tornadoes like I'm doing with my son.
No. Well, upright, but not sideways, because it might spill. And then you have to lick it up off the floor.
At Sierra, you'll always find apparel, footwear, and gear for 20 to 60% less than department and specialty store prices. But right now it's clearance time, so you can save even more on everything you need to get active and outside. Visit your local Sierra store today.
Let's finish up in Silo 18. We have...
We're only an hour in.
Yep, we have Knox and Shirley. They're having their like, hey, Shirley's like, why didn't you let me riot and like tear things apart? And Knox is like, hey, this is not the way we do things. They're both like sad and mad because I don't remember the character's name, but he's dead.
Pooper,
and,
I think, something like that.
Yeah. Copper, maybe? I don't know. And there is a point here where Shirley's like, Jules made it out. She's still alive. And Knox is like, I kind of believe you. And he's like, also, the writers of this TV show told me to mention right now that there's a wall of names below. Remember, we used to run down there when we were kids? And I think I know what it means. And I was like, all right, writers of the show, thanks for the mystery.
I feel like this is the second time we've had Knox say something like teasing and then not show it, where he's like, hey, I need you to do me two favors. Don't make the guns and this other thing. And then cuts. And now we got another one of this.
Right. I don't know. The actor that's playing Knox, fabulous job. Great. Shirley, also great. The names under the walls, I'm assuming it's just going to be like... Shirley, Hart, Knox. And he's going to be like, it's our love story. And Shirley's like, we are literally in the middle of a revolution. And Knox is like, yeah, but we wrote our names on the silo. Remember JL? And she's like, what does that mean? And he's like, I don't know. No one knows. All right. We very quickly hop into a conversation, and I almost had to like pause it so we have Meadows and Bernard talking, and Bernard's like, all right, I'll turn off the screens, I'll open the airlock, and I'll give you enough time for you to get over the hill. And I was like, wait, what? And so this is back to last episode where Meadows is like, I want to go out. So we understand that's not like an official request to go out. This is now a sneaky sneak, I want to go out.
Yeah.
And so she's just trying to escape, or she feels like Juliet did it, so she should be able to do it. What did you take from this?
Yeah, I don't know either, because I do feel like Bernard still needs her. Like, maybe he only needed her for that short bit to make that speech, but when she is gone, even if she like slips away and nobody knows that she actually left, people are going to eventually find out that she is gone and missing. Like, she's still the judge, she's still a figurehead. I don't know.
Right. I mean, she's a recluse, so it feels like she's... I don't know. I guess people saw her at the speech, to your point, but I was confused by this. So I'm now starting to understand that Meadows is just trying to escape, which leads to her needing a wardrobe, which, Tom, reminder, this is not our other podcast, Fastinistas. So, but Bernard measures her for her suit. I thought this was very funny. He's like, I have one. You can use mine. She's like, you're 9 feet tall. That was great.
That was a good line.
This was the moment where I definitely thought he was going to strangle her with a measuring tape, but it didn't happen. And so she discusses with him like, hey, I gave you some advice. You did not take it. Also, did you start like the kind of riot and firebombing in Mechanical in order to stir things up? And she also is like, I know Juliet didn't want to go out. I very curious with this dynamic. And I don't know what power Meadows has. Does Meadows have people that she is in charge of?
I don't think so. I mean, I think she is the judge, but she just knows so much in the order. Like, I kind of with you.
Sims does not report to her, even though he's judicial and she's the judge. Sims does not report to her, right?
I don't think so. No, I think Sims essentially reports to Bernard.
Okay.
But it is interesting that Meadows is kind of calling out Bernard here and saying that she knows about Juliet and everything. Like, this is the person who's currently measuring you for a suit to go out. Like, he could say, the suit is perfect, we made you a good one, but the second you get out there, it can be a bad suit, and she has no way of knowing. So it seems odd to stir this up if you're trying to make your escape. Just follow along.
Right. She also is like, you're not writing down any of the measurements. And he's like, well, my
He had a
father,
good memory. Used to be a waiter.
Armani, he never wrote down measurements either. And she's like, who's Armani? And he's like, Armani. He makes race cars. And she's like, you mean Ferrari? And he's like, yes, but Julian got confused with his Italian manufacturers. And Bernard's like, who's Julian? And then the scene cuts. So, Tom, let's calmly and without laughter move on to Silo 17, where there is no laughter being had, but some very fascinating things are happening. And I just want to say, Steve Zahn is doing the most Steve Zahn things that Steve Zahn has ever done, ever.
He's zoning it up.
My spouse was like, I'm so glad you mentioned who that was. She's like, I would be watching this whole episode knowing that voice and not knowing who it was. And I was like, thank you. These are one of the benefits of being married to me, which is why we should not get divorced soon. And so we have Juliet talking through. Did this give you like Lost, the Hatch vibes? This guy just talking through the portal, like hold up. That's what I thought about as I was watching Steve Zahn's vaguely tinted blue colored eyes in this thing.
Yeah, it seems like he's got like a scar almost over his eye, so I don't think he has like that genetic disorder where he has two different colored eyes. I'd imagine like maybe one is cloudy or something because of something happened in his past, because we know he has a haunted past, clearly. But I love this scene. I love the two actors kind of going back and forth just through this window and how much like his eyes are doing in these scenes. It's fantastic.
Yes, I do appreciate him for all of his Steve Zahniness. My favorite Steve Zahn is definitely the Out of Sight Steve Zahn, the movie with George Clooney and Jennifer Lopez. That's one that I came to late in life, but it is very enjoyable. But
I don't think I've seen it. I feel like my first introduction to Steve Zahn was That Thing You Do, that like kind of Beatles mockumentary, not mockumentary, but like thing they made from Tom Hanks, I think, from Playtone. That was a lot of fun, and he was great in that. He plays the drummer.
I did not see it. Someone in my house has recommended we watch it, but ever since Tom Hanks made it off that island, I've never watched another Tom Hanks vehicle other than Greyhound, which is a great movie. All right, Tom, this is a long episode and an even longer podcast, so let's stick with it. Steve Zahn is giving us some information here that I thought was
a lot of information,
fascinating. There's 50 silos.
I was super bummed when he said 50 silos. I wanted you to not know how many silos there were for a while, since that's the way you ended the last pod, but here we are, 50.
Oh, is that something that I wondered about?
Yeah, the close of our last pod, you kept just counting upwards from 18, saying how many silos there might have been, and then I told you I knew how many there were.
Oh, that's right. I did count from one. I got all the way up to 1,000, and then Spotify reached out to us and was like, please stop. All right, so there's 50. They're in 17. She came from 18. He seems to have been outside a bit because he asks her, like, hey, where was the sun? Where did you go? Like, so he is, despite his adamant, I'm not opening this door, he's done some venturing out, right? Is that the context clue that I'm supposed to pick up during this conversation?
I don't want to confirm nor deny what he knows. All I can say is just like throughout this whole sequence as he's talking to her, he's just throwing a lot of nuggets of wisdom that he doesn't seem to have any right to know. So my assumption is there's something potentially in this vault that is helping him become aware of what's going on outside.
Oh, interesting. Tom playing it pretty close to the chest just gave us a lot of information.
I don't know, did I?
Graham Yost is disappointed in you. All right, so his name is Solo, which is confusing because the show is called Silo. And so, for now on, I think we'll just refer to both of them as Silo. So that'll make it less confusing. He talks about when all of the people went out, like they seemed okay, but then like a wind kicked up and that kicked up some dust. And so he's assuming, I'm not going to take my science facts, not that science is real, I'm not going to take my science facts from Solo, this guy that is like a hobbit in a weird hole in the ground. I don't know.
Well, 'cause he makes mention like the poison was gone and then it came back. Like, again, he seems to be more knowledgeable of what is going on out there.
Interesting. Okay. He talks about the guy that did not clean in their silo. His name was Ron Tucker. Great non-cleaner name, or NPC, as we like to call him. And that all led to their revolution, which it dawns on Juliet of, like he went out, he wrote lies on the camera, and he decided not to clean, and that led to all of these people. The fact that they didn't see him die and he didn't clean led to this revolution. And so it's starting to dawn on her, like, oh, my silo is going to have the same reaction.
Right. Yeah. And Solo even makes a comment like, hey, no one forced him out. They chose to leave. They did so with like smiles on their faces. But I like the way that this kind of calls Juliet to action, because she doesn't really know what her next step is here. But now that she hears the story and knows now that her silo is in danger of the same fate of Silo 17, it has her just figure out, like, okay, what do I got to do to get back?
Right. And she's to blame, essentially. Like, hey, I did this. Now it's going to cause all those people to want to go out, and they will all die. I like the fact that we find out that Steve Zahn's head of IT was named Russell. Russell and Bernard are very close to each other. In fact, I'm pretty sure Bernard Russell is a famous writer, but both nerd names. So I found that pretty fascinating.
Well, Russell was mentioned in the openings of this season, right? Where the other sheriff was like looking for Russell of IT. So I think they were probably going to string up Russell, but Solo was his shadow. So maybe Russell got caught, but was able to save Solo. Got him in the vault.
And he doesn't let anyone in this vault unless they speak friend and enter. Otherwise, he keeps everyone out. We have the scene where Solo has provided we'll call it a beef stew for Juliet, which means he did open the door, but she was not in the area, or at least she was asleep. He provided it. I bet that stew tastes terrible.
I like his reaction. He's like, I really remember enjoying it at the beginning, but now it's really terrible. But and then when she first eats it, like his like surprise, I thought that was kind of cool and clever, because you don't really know why he was like surprised that she ate it, but essentially this was his test to see if she was a real person. I thought that was cool.
So he's seeing people, and he is testing out whether or not she's real. That was fascinating. Also, pretty terrifying. Also, thought maybe he was poisoning her, which
yes, that was my first thought too.
Mm-hmm. And he does ask her, hey, why didn't you clean? And she kind of gives her spiel where she found out about the visor screens and the false vision that people see when they do go out, and so they were trying to show other people. And
well, this is the other bit I want to say too, where she talked about there was these creatures in the air and they were doing the same thing, so I knew it wasn't real. And again, Solo's kind of coming in here like, yeah, they're called birds. Like, how does he know what these are called?
Right.
I think that's interesting.
Right. That's a good point. And for her to recognize, like, hey, they were flying in the same way that I saw on the video that was on the hard drive. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know if this was the show like treating us as an audience, where it's like, hey, some people might be dumb and not realize why she knew what she knew, and so we're going to explain it. But to your point, it leads Steve Zahn, Solo, to explain some things that he knows that she doesn't know. So I'm going to say the show thinks we're smarter than we are, and that's why this conversation happens. She does ask him, hey, how long have you been alone? And why are the bodies like close to the door, not as old as all the bodies that like died outside? Mm-hmm. And I don't think they answer it in this episode. If they did, I missed it. But I'm very interested to know how long Solo has been alone. And Juliet kind of like, she is acting like she's worked it out. Are we supposed to have worked out like because there's the message on the door that says, we will get in sooner or later. Like, what happened here?
She starts to connect the dots, like where you see, I mean, obviously we've seen the vault in Silo 18, how it's just a keypad, but his keypad is like the walls chiseled out. It seems like it's burned. So people were trying to get in, and she's kind of poking and prodding, and that kind of causes him to close his little viewing window and kind of standoffish. So she kind of backs off a little bit. But I think she just finally puts it all together when it says, like, this guy was trapped in here and people were trying to get in and murder him. And that's why he's not trusting of anybody. So Juliet, I think, realizes there's nothing I can say to this man to try to get him out. Even though she did beg and plead and say, hey, we can save the 10,000 lives in mind. It's not just about me. Yeah, I thought that's essentially what happened. And I'm assuming we'll probably get some backstory as to what these two bodies were and what Solo went through.
Sure. I'm also wondering, like, they are trying to get into that. Like, what does he have in that vault that would cause people to not just
chicken
ignore
stew, buddy.
him? What's that?
Chicken stew.
Oh,
he's got loads of chicken stew.
Okay, he's got some Denti more in there. I guess that's beef stew, so that's a little bit different. But we have Juliet. She needs a suit, so we talk about the firefighting suit. Juliet's greatest fear is water, so there's some water in the way.
Of course.
I'm assuming we are going to get an underwater sequence where he's running some sort of air pump while she like walks across in like one of those old scuba suits that's like made of metal. But I'm fascinated to see where this goes, because ultimately Steve Zahn, Solo, leaves his room. They are on that. I honestly thought he was going to fall off the bridge. I was like, oh, this is so funny. He like comes out, makes this moment, and then teeters off. And they sit on the bridge. I was like, that bridge is not structurally sound, guys. Let's sit somewhere else.
So put a bunch of bags on there. It's good.
Sure. I'm interested to know how long he's been alone, how long he's been in that room. And then we've got two actors here that are doing a great job. And so we do have to make it back to Silo 18 eventually, which means we need some suits. So I'm assuming that's what most of next episode, or at least part of next episode, will be.
Yeah. And Solo's a very, very interesting character from the book, and we do get a decent amount of his backstory in the book. So I'm kind of hoping they do explore that a little bit. I don't think they have to, but I think if they do, it will just kind of fill in his character quite a bit more. Does
Steve Zahn as a casting make sense based on the book?
So good. Yeah, so good. Like, when I heard he was doing it, and I kind of know like Steve Zahn-isms, like I thought he could bring the guy to life for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'm enjoying it. I thought this episode moved well. Don't watch it in a well-lit room. You got to watch it in a darkly lit room because there's just no light. But for those of you that have something that we missed or would like to participate in the conversation, you can reach out to us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. We're having fun with the show. We're going to continue on. We will be back after the holidays for episode 4. It was good to hear from Barrett. Good to hear from Jennifer and Tom. I'm sure you handle, because I'm not allowed to, our other social stuff. Where else can people interact?
Yeah, follow us on the socials. Whether we're on quite a few now. So we were on just Twitter and Instagram, but we're on Blue Sky. We're on Threads. So follow us on any of those at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. Let us know what you think of the show. If you have any theories and have not read the books, please let us know. And if you like what we're doing, rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps us out a bunch. And check out some of our other shows. We mentioned Bad Monkey on this show, another Apple one. That was a lot of fun that we just did. Go check them out. We'd appreciate it.
Sure. And if you'd like to support us, you can follow on Spotify. Please rate and review us if you're going to do it well. And then TeePublic, we have some merch there. I just want to mention that Spotify allows you to comment on episodes. And someone, not that long ago, wrote, I found this episode difficult to listen to because of the person that was making all of the jokes. And Tom responded with, we don't disagree with your assessment. Thanks for listening. And that's the type of interaction you will get from us if you decide to interact. And Tom, you're a brilliant man. I love you to death. We will be
Call
back.
him like I see him.
We will be back for episode 4 for Team Binge. I have been Julian.
And I have been Tom. Till next week, everybody, and happy holidays.